Oh, that's spicy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Way of Ramen. So this one did not turn out like how I wanted it to. I tried to use my leftover tonkotsu soup to make a Kikanbo / High Five inspired spicy miso ramen. I got a lot of help from two people, Craig at craig.brews and Mike at ramen__lord on Instagram, as they're both in Chicago near High Five. And despite their best efforts, I still managed to mess this one up. I decided to put the video up anyway because I'm pretty sure my big mistake was just trying to combine too many recipes, which led to too much spice being added to the bowl. So I'm just gonna try to point out my mistakes as we go so you guys can maybe give this one a shot and have better results than I did. Alright, let's get right into it. So I'm starting off making a new batch of noodles here. I'm doing a 7-gram mix of sodium carbonate and potassium carbonate for my alkaline mix, 5 grams of kosher salt, and 175 grams of water for a 35% hydration noodle. I'm gonna slowly add the salt and the carbonates into the water and mix it till everything is dissolved. And once it's all dissolved, this is what's known as kansui in ramen noodle making. Next, I'm gonna measure out 500 grams of flour. This is a 90% bread flour to a 10% whole wheat flour mix. This is my current go-to flour mix for ramen noodles. Then I'm gonna slowly add the kansui into the flour and try to get everything incorporated at first with chopsticks. I'm leaving a lot of this footage in because this step seems to be a step that a lot of people rush or skip, and which leads to their dough not being properly hydrated, which leads to their dough crumbling and falling apart when they're trying to cut their noodles. The goal for this step is you're really trying to hydrate as much of the flour as possible right from the start to prevent those issues. Once you've added all of the kansui into the flour, start rubbing the loose dough between your hands to further hydrate the dough. Again, the better you can get everything hydrated, the easier it will be to work with the final dough. Once you can squeeze a handful of loose dough together and it kind of just sticks together, but you can also break it apart easily, that's when you know when you're done with this step. You're gonna transfer everything into a Ziploc bag, and then we're just gonna let this rest as is, kind of like a pre-knead rest. And this is gonna help the dough degas and also help with the gluten structure for the final noodle. So after 30 minutes, you can take the Ziploc bag and you can just put it into another bag and then throw it on the ground and step on it to knead it into a flat sheet of dough. You can then let this rest for another 30 minutes, or if you're trying to finish filming before your kid gets home, you can give this dough a light dusting with some flour, and then you can cut it up into sheets that you can fit into your pasta machine. Just give it a quick roll with a rolling pin to kind of make it flat enough so it can fit easily into the pasta machine. And then from there, you're gonna just roll it down to the size that you want. So an important step when using a pasta machine or any kind of noodle machine is you wanna laminate the dough a few times. Laminating is basically just when you fold it over and then you smash it together again. This really helps with the gluten structures of your final noodle, and it'll help you make a better noodle. So you're gonna do this a few times and then you're gonna just roll it out to what size noodle that you actually want. I think I went to a 5 for this noodle, which is pretty fat, but that's kind of what I wanted. And once you kind of have your dough flattened out to the size that you want, you can just put on the noodle attachment and cut your noodles. Give the noodles a light dusting with some flour and then store them individually into their own Ziploc bags for each serving, and then let that rest overnight in the fridge. Next, we're going to make a miso dare or miso tare. This is a miso tare that's based on Ramen Lord's recipe according to Craig. I cut the recipe in half, so I'm grating a 1-inch piece of ginger, 1 clove of garlic, and about 1/8 of an onion. Then I measured out 280 grams of miso, a blend of red and white miso, around 70% red miso. The original container I chose was a little bit too small, so I transferred it into a bigger container along with the miso and gave that a quick stir, and then I added 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, half a teaspoon of sesame oil, 1 teaspoon of mirin, and about 1.5 teaspoons of tahini. I gave everything a mix, and then I got that stored in the fridge. This miso tare, by the way, can be used for just regular miso ramen too, so you can keep that on hand. Next, I'm making a sansho numbing oil, which is basically a kuromayu with some Szechuan peppercorns and some other spices mixed in. This is the point where I think things actually went wrong. Craig's recipe doesn't call for a sansho oil, but other Japanese recipes that I found do, so I have a feeling that adding this plus the spice mix Craig recommends at the end is what ended up ruining the bowl. But this oil smelled really good and tasted really good, so I'm just going to show you how I made it anyway. And so if you ever attempt a Kikanbo style recipe, you can decide where you want to cut back on some of these numbing spices. The spices that I used for this oil were sansho pepper, black pepper, and Szechuan peppercorns. You need to grind down the Szechuan peppercorns in some way, and the suribachi didn't work, so I ended up just using a blender, and that seemed to work well enough. You need 1 teaspoon of each spice, so 1 teaspoon of ground Szechuan peppercorns, 1 teaspoon of sansho pepper, and 1 teaspoon of black pepper. Get some oil into a small pan and add some roughly chopped garlic and onions. Then cook it on low heat until everything is kind of burnt, like black burnt, really burnt. Then stir in your numbing spices and cook that again for another 30 seconds. Transfer everything into a blender and then blitz it until it's smooth and your numbing oil is done. Next, I'm gonna make some chashu, and I'm just doing a simple nikomi chashu here. Recipe is in the description, but basically it's 200 ml of water, 100 ml of soy sauce, 100 ml of sake, 80 to 100 grams of sugar, a few slices of ginger, some cloves of garlic smashed, and some green onions. I'm also adding 3 pieces of star anise, and I hate star anise, but I saw this Japanese recipe that calls for star anise in Kikanbo chashu, so I'm adding it here. It's gross. Anyways, get some pork into the braising liquid and let it simmer covered for around 2 hours. Halfway through, give it a flip and let that go for another hour, and then when your 2 hours are up, you can take out your chashu and it's done. So here's my leftover tonkotsu soup from my last video. I'm just gonna get this heated up while I get the rest of the things ready for the bowl. So I noticed that Kikanbo always has a piece of baby corn on their ramen, so I got one here. I'm just gonna take it out and put it onto a metal tray. And I'm also gonna cut up some of the chashu into big chunks, and then I'm gonna try to torch all of these toppings. Speaking of torches, I finally got one, but I don't have any fuel for it yet, so I'm gonna use this instead. This is basically a super high-powered blow dryer called a loaf lighter that is used to start charcoal for barbecues. I've never actually done this before, but holy shit, it actually worked. So the last thing to prep here is the spice mix I mentioned earlier. 1/4 teaspoon ground Szechuan peppercorns, 1/4 teaspoon sansho pepper, 1/2 teaspoon smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of ichimi togarashi, and 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper. I got some lard in a hot wok and added some bean sprouts. I gave that a quick stir, and then I added 50 grams of the miso tare. I cooked that down for a few seconds, and then I added the spice mix and 350 milliliters of the tonkotsu soup. I mixed it all together, then brought it to a boil for around 30 seconds, then covered it and got the rest of the bowl ready. Got my noodles out and cooked them for about 1 minute and 30 seconds, and while the noodles were cooking, I got the soup into a heated bowl. Then when the noodles were done, I added them and topped it with some chopped bean sprouts, a few pieces of the chashu, the baby corn, some garlic chives that I had cut up earlier, and the sansho numbing oil. And once again, the numbing oil plus the spice mix was probably what messed up the bowl. Just doing your regular old kuromayu is what Craig recommends in his recipe, and I think that probably would have been better. But that's basically it. The color was slightly different than what Craig posted, so I'm pretty sure I did some other things wrong too. So if you guys have any ideas about that, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. I'm not too good with spicy food, so I'm not sure if I'm going to attempt another Kikanbo style bowl again, but this was a pretty good learning experience for me. You know, I'm still learning, and so making terrible bowls is just a thing that's going to happen from time to time. Anyways, thank you very much again to Craig and Mike for helping me out, or trying to help me out. I feel like I let them down more than myself, kind of like a boxer getting KO'd in the first round after his coaches helped him train for months. If you want to give Craig's recipe a shot, he actually posted it to wayoframen.com. I'll link it up in the description below. And you can also try Mike's spicy ramen recipe on Reddit, which will also be in the description. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys all so much for the support, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.